Back now to hear more from some of our speakers as they discuss Microsoft Ignite announcements with impressions on business impact and community responses.
Hi, my name is Maarten Visser, and I will be hosting today's panel discussion where we're going to discuss the most important topics that were announced during Microsoft Ignite. We will be starting with a quick introduction round. And Erica, I want to start with you. Who are you?
Sure. Hey, my name is Erica Toelle, and I'm a Microsoft MVP based out of Seattle. And I tend to cover topics such as compliance and enterprise content management.
All right. Paolo.
Hi, I'm Paolo Pialorsi. I'm a project manager and a consultant. I work in a company of my own called PSys.com. And I'm an MVP on Office Server and Services, as well as a proud member of the PMP team. And I'm mainly focused on all the development area around Microsoft 365 and Azure. And that's it.
All right. Mark, you're next.
Hello, my name is Mark Rackley. I am a Microsoft MVP as well. I'm a partner at a Microsoft 365 consulting firm called Pate Group. I live right in the middle of the States in a place called Harrison, Arkansas. If you look really hard, you can find it. And I organize a community event over here called the North American Collaboration Summit.
Great. Elio, you're last.
Hello, I'm Elio from Belgium, and the third European on the call. And we have a lot of common. I'm also an MVP. I'm also in the PMP team together with Paolo, and I'm working as an engineering lead for Valo Intranet.
All right. So the first topic that we're going to talk about is this notion of Teams and SharePoint and how they are moving closer together. So last Ignite, November 2019. There was a wedding between Teams and SharePoint, which was like the better together. And this story is keeping unfolding like to a next level. Mark, can you explain what did you see at the last Ignite this year regarding that marriage and how this relationship is developing?
Yeah, so I think Jeff Teeper said it best when he said Teams was powered by SharePoint, and it's just like it's such an integral part of Teams. And with what they're coming out with the announcements, it's becoming more obvious that Teams is becoming the place that we go for everything. You know, we start our day in Teams, we work in Teams, and there's so much we can do in Teams. And they're making it even easier. One of the things they announced at Ignite was adding the home site link to Teams. So they showed it as an icon in the top left of Teams in that left rail. And from there, you can go to your home site. So you're now not having to leave Teams to interact with your portal. Teams is just more and more becoming that one place to go. What they showed looks really great as far as the way it's embedded in there. It goes closely along with embedding like SharePoint pages in Teams. If you've gone to do that now, they're taking away the left nav, the top header, and the page is just nicely fitting into Teams. So Teams is just more and more becoming that place that you go to do all your work.
So I'm curious to learn from the others, like how do we feel like this, that the Teams front end, the mobile client, the desktop client, the web client is also our gateway to our company intranet or to a HR portal, or for me it doesn't feel really natural. But what do you guys think?
I'll go here because we're running an intranet product, and it's actually very natural for end users because an end user now only has to take care about one application instead of, oh, I need to have my web browser, I need to have my Teams client, I need to have this and this and this. Now they only start up their one client, which is Microsoft Teams, and they have everything. They have their portal together with a full search experience, together with a chat experience, and they can go to meetings. So what do you want more? And regarding what Mark was saying, Jeff said it during his session, SharePoint is becoming the platform behind the scenes. So we see it on, for me as a developer, we see it as a rapid growing platform with SharePoint Framework. That SharePoint Framework directly integrates in Microsoft Teams. So there's a lot of capabilities there, and that makes it complete, or is going to make it a lot easier for end users.
Can I add something? I think that we should start thinking about Microsoft Teams not only as a tool for modern workplace and collaboration, but we should also start thinking about Microsoft Teams as the container for any custom developed solution that we want to have in our internet or in our business. So Teams is the right choice for providing the UI elements of any kind of solution that we want to provide through Microsoft 365. That's my feeling, at least. Maybe because I'm a developer, but that's my feeling.
Yeah, and just to agree with my other panelists and tell a little story. So my sister is a physics teacher for older students, and she had never used any Microsoft products until, last spring when she suddenly had to start teaching remotely. And she has no idea that there's anything else but Teams in her universe. And I think having that one place for her to go has made her life a lot more simple. And I'm sure even in the enterprise, other people have had that experience as well. So having it be the place to develop apps, the place for your intranet, it just totally makes sense.
Would you guys agree that maybe one of the reasons that it feels more natural or easy to use is the navigational aspect of it? So the one thing you need to kick off this client, the Teams client, and from there, the navigation is maybe more easy than it used to be of just going towards a certain SharePoint site. Is that one of the reasons, or is there more to it?
I think that's a tricky question, because that's one of the pain points that a lot of end users have, because they get lost quite rapidly in Teams with all the channels and stuff. So if you do it on a global app level, then it's very easy, because then you can say, for instance, that's my hub where I go to all my portal sites, and you're immediately there. But from the moment you start navigating through channels and then through apps and then yet again through another channel, because you have these deep linking capabilities, then it becomes quite tricky, because then there is a back button. It's at the top left, but they don't know it, and then they are lost. So it's a very simple navigation structure inside Teams, but still it's quite difficult for users to understand.
Do we see the left rail of Teams, because that's of course a one-click button then to get to your home portal or your company intranet? Could there be a danger that this left rail is going to be really full of important apps managed by corporate communications?
Absolutely. Absolutely, it's going to happen. I mean, just like we have way too many bookmarks in our our web browser, it's going to be the same thing. So I think companies are going to need to probably think about that and try to limit it to the critical apps they need to use.
Interesting. I'm very curious to see how this will play out, and I think it's learning while we go.
That's also, I think a lot of companies have to step back for now, because there were a lot of companies that were already going full steam ahead. They started creating channels, they started creating new teams and so on. And I feel that in a lot of companies, and I hate to say it, but it's some kind of garbage collection. So there's a lot of clutter. But with all the apps now coming into place and becoming more important, it's the whole aspect of guiding the users and guiding your company to how to use Teams, because everyone started using it because they needed to, and without thinking of how should we actually implement it. So the more important it becomes, the more you have to step back for a while and say, okay, this is now a good strategy how we are going to implement it.
I totally agree with you, Elio. Just to make an example, usually, at least in the past, but today as well, we were used to building SharePoint solutions, thinking about the information architecture. But when businesses start using Microsoft Teams, they just start using it, creating channels, creating teams and stuff like that, and they often don't think about the information architecture. The fact that now, for example, also, if we think about the news that came out at Ignite, we will be able to use the Teams templates to build a predefined set of templates of teams that we can reuse. So we can start thinking about a real information architecture also when we think about Microsoft Teams, and not only when we think about SharePoint Online. And I think that's a good thing to know and to leverage as soon as it will be available.
True. But there's one thing happening, of course, and that's we're mixing the hub for teamwork, which is collaboration, with the world of publishing, which is portals. So the hub for teamwork is also becoming the entry point for your portals or your where you consume information rather than collaborate on it.
Let's make it even more difficult. With Project Oakdale, you're creating your business applications inside of Microsoft Teams. So that's also a project that has been announced at Microsoft Ignite. And Project Oakdale, initially, it's quite cool because it allows you to use Power Apps or the Power Platform per se inside Microsoft Teams, and all the licensing is there for you. If you have a Microsoft Teams license, then you're allowed to use CDS and stuff within Microsoft Teams. Normally, it's a very expensive license if you just need a really small part. But here it's like Microsoft is thinking about business line applications that integrate completely within Microsoft Teams so that you never have to go to any other kind of context. Like I don't have to open any other app. So eventually we can maybe just work on an iPad or a Surface laptop or whatever, and only open Teams, and then the rest is history.
Maybe they'll come out with like a team book. Kind of like you have a Chromebook, they'll come out with a team book, and all it is Teams.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're at a really interesting point where everybody they're so excited about Teams, they're just deploying it all over the place. And now we're having to go back and think about things like content lifecycle management and governance. And it kind of reminds me of SharePoint circa 2006. I mean, what can we learn from that and now apply to Teams, right? It's the hot new tool now that you can build everything in, like SharePoint used to be.
Yeah, and how we're going to do all those post-provisioning, Paolo, on those teams and making sure that they get content types and stuff.
Yeah, of course, we can leverage PMP to do that indeed, but not only PMP actually. As I said, we can also use the Teams template to provision Teams, but generally speaking, I would say that you still need something else on top of Team templates, like, for example, PMP provisioning, to being able to provision both the SharePoint side of the story and the Teams side of the story, as well as the custom applications and stuff like that. So, yeah.
So we shortly hit on Project Oakdale, the product formerly known as DataFlex, which is this CDS Lite, right? Because we went pretty short on that, and I think it's an important ingredient to build those applications within Teams and having a platform for it. Any ideas on how these? Because there are certain important limitations, I understood, towards what this CDS Lite Project Oakdale can do. Anybody wants to share on what their ideas here are about that?
Well, I think it's important to understand, and Elio, feel free to cut me off if you want to. Every time you create a Power Apps Project Oakdale platform in Teams, it creates an environment for every team that you create it in. And in each one of those environments, you can have 1 million rows of data in that light CDS before you have to start paying for it. But the cool thing about the CDS is you can have true relational data. So we can stop trying to hack SharePoint to be a relational database. We now have access to real relational database content.
Yeah, but there's also another neat thing about it. It comes with Azure API management as well. So you can, for instance, connect your Azure functions to it, which is normally a premium connector. So now you can, with the same license, you get Azure API services, you bind your Azure functions, and then you can do more things with that as well. So that's also quite one of the nice things that you get there.
So basically, it grows the use cases of what you can do with Power Apps and Power Automate within the context of Teams without buying additional Power Platform licensing.
Indeed.
Cool.
I think they want us using Teams.
Indeed.
That's the way of looking at it. Anything else you want to share about Project Oakdale? No. Okay.
I think if we start thinking about CDS and relational databases or content, I think for a consultant, they have a really hard life right now because they will have to go to a client and they have to tell or explain when to use what. Like you have CDS, you have Microsoft lists, and you have SharePoint lists. And maybe there's also a database like SQL or Cosmos DB, but when do you use what? And as a functional consultant, I would be very scared to explain all these things to my end users. Like I was already happy that they understood SharePoint lists, and now all of a sudden there's CDS and there is Microsoft lists. So
does anybody dare to share an initial rule of the thumb, like when, of course, when there's some kind of relational integrity needed, or then of course there's a clear answer where you need to go. But would there be any other takes on it?
Well, I've been always saying that SharePoint shouldn't be a replacement for a database. So I've always been against any solution using SharePoint as a database. That's my feeling and my way of living in the world of SharePoint. That said, now that we have Microsoft Lists, which is, by the way, just a nicer UI on top of the old school lists in SharePoint Online, let me put it this way. I think it's a good idea to try to leverage the Microsoft Lists for simple content that you want to store, because it will be easily accessible by the end users, easily maintainable by end users, still keeping the same infrastructure in the backend. And eventually, again, as a developer and from a developer point of view, you can still do stuff like automated provisioning of lists in Microsoft Lists, still using the same tooling like PowerShell or PnP provisioning or stuff like that, even if your end user will be able to benefit of the new UI, of the new list view and stuff like that. So it's a good technology and a very good compromise to keep on using kind of an old but solid technology like SharePoint lists with a new modern UI and a modern experience.
Yeah, I agree with that. And yeah, you should always start with what's easiest and only go more complicated if you have to. So if every Microsoft list, why go into Project Oakdale? Because you're adding more technical debt if you do.
Yeah, completely agree.
It's interesting to see the competition between Project Oakdale and Power Apps, basically within the context of a team and the Microsoft Lists. Since I think both can service on a mobile device and both will use on any device, and you will have a clean UI in it. And then of course, yeah, the things that you mentioned. So the relationship between data and start simple. I think that's always a good starting point as a guideline for everything we do in our jobs, right?
Yes.
Keep it simple as possible.
If you can talk your developers into it, yeah.
Good. So maybe as a next topic within the context of teams, there were a lot of announcements regarding compliancy. And that's also, of course, if we're putting more stuff into Teams and underneath, of course, in SharePoint. I believe some very interesting announcements were there on that topic. Erica, do you want to kick that one off?
Sure. Yeah, I think the biggest announcement, the one we've all been waiting for, is compliance for meeting recordings. So previously, meeting recordings from Teams were stored in Microsoft Stream, but as of this month and next month, depending on when it's rolled out to you, it's actually going to store the meeting recordings in OneDrive and SharePoint, so that you're able to apply retention policies to the recordings, and you're able to find them through eDiscovery. And yeah, just having it in SharePoint and OneDrive is foundational to any of the compliance features. And even more exciting, especially for the recordings that are stored in OneDrive, you can actually auto-apply a different retention policy for recordings than the content that's stored in the rest of the OneDrive, because there's often very different use cases for those data from a compliance perspective. And then beyond that, This wasn't a specific announcement at Ignite, but it's kind of, if you look at all the announcements added up together, what we're looking at is finally we're getting the ability through things like the PNP templates and Teams templates that Paolo was talking about, and other things like Project Cortex and SharePoint Syntax, to bring more structure to our Teams data. And we need that structure in order to govern the lifecycle, in order to appropriately apply compliance protections like retention. And it's just really exciting to see things kind of finally maturing in that way.
One funny note there, Erica, is when they were announcing that they weren't going to use Stream anymore and going back to, and I already said it, going back to OneDrive and SharePoint, it was like, what? Is Office 365 video coming back?
Yeah.
Office 365 video.
Yeah. And that was also a portal template being provisioned into the SharePoint side, right? Basically underneath. And that's so that we're going back. So we made a detour.
But it made total sense, like what Erica was saying. But yeah, they had to learn over time, I think.
Yeah, and let me add one more thing about this topic, that having all of the meeting recordings back in SharePoint and OneDrive will let all of the developers to use Microsoft Graph and the APIs to have access to that kind of content. So it will improve the quality of life of developers too. So
yeah, you just have to take into account that it's going to take up that SharePoint storage, though, if it's being stored in SharePoint. So I think people are going to have to take that into account. Do we know what the trigger is for being stored in SharePoint versus OneDrive?
Yeah, so if you create the meeting itself from within a team, then it'll be stored in SharePoint. But for example, a lot of people schedule the meetings and they use the Teams button in Outlook to add the meeting information. Well, that's technically a chat because it doesn't know what channel this is in regard to. So in that case, it would be stored in the OneDrive.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. So,
See,
so
I
the
learned something
person,
today.
yeah, the person who's organizing the event, or it will be this person's OneDrive, I guess, where it's stored. Yeah.
Yeah.
Clear.
I also think about the product creation right now, because the Stream APIs were missing. So if you create a product right now based on that and start retrieving all the information and put it on a portal inside SharePoint, might be easier.
Yeah, and I did understood there would be coming some out-of-the-box templates for portals regarding the new Stream on SharePoint, right? I've seen those announced.
You mean
could
for
be,
SharePoint?
But
or did I misunderstood your suggestion here of what you could do?
No, I mean that with Stream, the biggest thing that we were missing was the capability of APIs. So there was nothing to automate or whatever. So one of the things is if you have a team, if you had a Teams meeting and it was recorded on Stream, you had to specify the permissions manually afterwards. But here, what Erica was saying is if it comes in your OneDrive, Paolo can create an application right now that runs on a schedule and sees, hey, there's a new meeting in your OneDrive. Put it, take it up and put it somewhere else so that everyone can leverage it. Yeah. So now it can be automated. So if you then create a portal around it, then everyone can see all the meetings.
Yeah,
I can tell you
might
more.
Be some meetings.
I can tell you more. Sorry. No, I was just saying that I can tell you even more because now they also announced the availability in the near future of apps for Teams in meeting. So you could actually create an app in a meeting, which will do all the magic, all the tricks right at the end of a meeting in order to make the recording available to whoever is in target. So really cool scenarios.
And we'll probably be able to finally share videos anonymously now too, right?
Yeah.
So that'll be a big plus.
Does anybody has any suggestions what this capability could provide, having the ability of doing those apps in meetings and what you could hook into and how you could leverage that as a use case?
Yeah, Scrum meetings. Meetings around projects, meetings around normal meetings with clients, hooking into your databases or other kind of systems like what I do on a daily basis, having meetings with my developers. What's your status on a couple of tasks? And if all of a sudden there's a new ID popping up, then you don't have to go to another system. You just say, hey, here, click on these 3 dots and tack, 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 you fill it in and it automatically goes into the system. That's already something we are thinking about of doing.
You're too business oriented. I was thinking about educational stuff. So you can improve the quality of life of students in a classroom, for example, with custom apps to improve their learning experience during a lesson, an online lesson.
Yeah,
my kids are not old enough. So.
Meaning that I'm older than you?
Wiser.
But that's
yeah.
very good use case, Paolo. Just to be clear, yeah, I can imagine a lot of useful use cases in education for this kind of ability to hook into those meetings and providing teacher kind of interaction components. We're going to get polling, I believe, within live meetings, and some, I think also just a Power App or a form. But there's, of course, much more that you can do to include interactivity in sessions. Yeah, cool. Any other suggestions regarding this capability of apps in meetings? Or otherwise, we might move back to the other topic we hit before this, which was compliancy. I do think because we talked about meeting recordings going to SharePoint, which will bring a lot more of capabilities as APIs, so we can build much more additionally solutions on it regarding well, what Elio mentioned, like consumption of videos. And then on the other side, of course, Erica, there will also be more options of doing retention and compliancy. And any thoughts? What did Microsoft announce, and what other things do you see there?
Yeah, I'm just going to go through the list really quick. So another one was retention for Yammer messages. That's another one we've been waiting for a while. This is for anyone who's trying to implement Teams, but your legal department is objecting. Before, when you try to do a search for information in e-discovery case, if someone used a modern attachment, meaning there was just a link off to the file, that wouldn't be included when you searched for the messages. It would just be a lost file, and you have to review that. So now we have modern attachments announced at Ignite, where the file that's linked to in the message will come along with the e-discovery search. Sounds like a small thing, but a huge deal to your legal departments. Another big announcement around e-discovery is we finally got our first round of graph APIs for e-discovery. This is a huge business process that companies spend a lot of money on. And now we'll be able to automate the provisioning of certain pieces or adding of users to the case or anything like that. We don't have all the APIs to do that all today, but the first round has been announced. And this is also a big deal because until now, compliance has been off in its own world in regard to APIs. And the fact that we're now finally coming in the graph universe, huge deal. And then the last thing is we finally are seeing our first example of Power Apps being integrated into compliance. So there's a lot of business processes that go on with managing compliance. And until now, there's been no workflow tool. Well, we have Power Automate and Flow. Why not leverage that? So now the communication compliance, which is a supervision solution, has allowed us to start building those. And I hope to see it in other solutions soon. So that was a big list, but
good stuff. Absolutely. Anybody wants to add something to that or see new opportunities here?
Yet again, I heard Power Apps, Power Platform, Power Automate. Yeah, that's also a platform that they really are pushing very, very hard. Also, Power Automate integration inside Teams, that you can automatically start a flow from a message or from a chat, is also there. So also a capability that is very useful in certain scenarios. And if you're looking at Power Platform, it's actually becoming more mature. And they are also thinking about CI/CD processes there. So in October, so this month, there should be GitHub Actions coming out for Power Apps. So automated rolling out of Power Apps. which is actually quite cool, I think.
Yeah, especially from a developer perspective, having the more DevOps approach to building those apps and testing those apps, and yeah, that would be great.
I don't know if every developer is going to use it, although they position it as more a maker thing.
Mm-hmm.
Developers are still not really wanting to use it or willing to use it, although it has a lot of capabilities. And I think as a developer, you need to go and check out what Power Platform has to offer to you, so that you can make a good decision point in when to use what, or what is my tipping point over to development, and or where can I help my makers in my company to make sure that their apps are being usable and being maintainable for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a client that they have a large enterprise apps development group, and they don't write Power Apps, but they don't want the business creating Power Apps either because they can't fold it into their deployment lifecycle. So being able to take what somebody else has built, but then get it into their processes has made them more agreeable to those people using those, because now they've got the solution, they've got some documentation, they can put some processes around it. So I think it's actually really huge, especially for those large organizations who've been pushing back on its use.
Nice. Any other thoughts on this topic? I find it interesting to see how the Power Platform and the pro developer story, how it's growing. And I always enjoy having discussions with people about the role of the pro developer, looking at model-driven software or low code, and how those two will work together. And any comments on that? Since three of you are also like a bit of developers, so have you been using like incorporating Power Apps into solutions? Do you see that happen?
I can actually go here during this Corona pandemic. I got the idea together with Louise Friese to create a sticker store, and one of to learn from it. So we didn't really want to make it really big. Now we're thinking of something really big from it. But we wanted to start building on top of the Power Platform to see what kind of capabilities that it has, and to see how far we can stretch it outside of the Microsoft 365 ecospace. So it runs outside of it, but we use almost all the capabilities there. And that's also very good for me because I didn't know anything about Power Apps. I didn't know anything about Power Automate, or a little bit. But now I have quite a good understanding of what it is. And I can also say, okay, this is now my tipping point to move over to development, or maybe do both at the same time and do an integration part, like calling an Azure function to do something there, and then calling in back to your Power Automate to do the rest. So as I said, I think it's very, very wisely for you as a developer to check out what Power Platform has to offer there and work together.
Yeah, I have a story about the Power Platform as well. So going back to that same client that has a large enterprise apps development group, the moment you write a line of code, you have to go through that group to get the project done. And our client was dealing with the fact that everyone's working from home, and they yearly do this United Way silent auction. But since nobody was in the office, they couldn't do that anymore. And they had a deadline of like a month away. And it was 6 months to wait for the enterprise apps group to get involved. So I'm like, let's look at the Power Platform. And we were able to roll out, we had a functional prototype in 8 hours of the auction app using the Power Apps platform. We deployed it we embedded it into their intranet homepage. It went live last week and they love it. And the amount of time to develop that application is tiny compared to writing code to do it. So even if you're a developer, take a look at the Power Platform and Power Apps, because you can do some cool stuff quickly.
Great. Good example. So I would like to move again back to the SharePoint platform. Paolo, you had another announcement that you liked.
Yeah, there are some new capabilities that have been announced at Ignite, like, for example, the global navigation bar. I love the idea of having a global navigation bar across the site where you browse through with your browser. I'd like to see a an API to being able to read and write content in the global navigation bar. We will see if there will be any API or not, or maybe not at the very beginning, maybe later. But I'm really looking forward to having an API as well, because I'm thinking about scenarios where I want to automatically provision the content of the navigation bar. I also really like the idea that we will be able to have audience targeting for web paths and quick links, because it is something that customers are always asking for in internet solutions. I see Elio nodding because he's clearly aware of this need. And also, I like the idea that we will be able to customize more and more the UI of modern pages, specifically in communication sites, and we will be able to use, for example, the new extended and minimal headers in pages. So we will be able to have full content pages or full Chrome pages, depending on what we want to do in our sites. And the fact that they are enabling developers and site builders to achieve these results is really cool, in my opinion.
Any other additions on that part of like SharePoint development capabilities or functional features in the platform that got added or announced?
So one of the announcements I saw that I just cannot wait to see is Project Nucleus. And that's where you can now work with lists offline. You can work with extremely large lists. I think he demoed a 20,000 item list, and it was super fast. So I don't know all the ins and outs or when it's going to be released, but that probably of all the things announced, that's the thing that I'm looking forward to trying out and playing with most.
And if I heard it correctly, we can also build custom solutions on Project Nucleus.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that will come later.
Yeah, but that's also something I'm really looking forward to. Getting the data offline and going on a train or in an airplane, working on something and then stepping out. Okay, we don't do that anymore, but when we can travel again.
What is taking an airplane?
Yeah.
It's not only offline. I think it's also performance, right?
Yeah. You can work together on the same thing. That is indeed really good. But for me, having that offline capability is something that we always missed in a list experience.
So for the more technical viewers, do you guys know what's happening underneath? Well, what's the technology being used? I understood it's like progressive web apps kind of things happening underneath. Somebody wants to elaborate?
Yeah, a lot of text files will probably be written on your. No, I don't know. No, there are some web workers most probably going on, and
sure.
progressive web apps is indeed intended, and it has the offline mode immediately integrated, so it takes everything offline what you need. So basically, it's your browser capabilities that is doing it there, and probably some magic as well.
Yeah. Cool thing that I understood. I was happy to be able to do an interview with Jeff Teeper last week, and he actually explained that they're using the OneDrive sync capability to store those files and to scale that infrastructure of having these probably JSON files and have the service workers in your browser grab those files and that's basically how it works. So that's very cool, actually, having those capabilities.
Makes sense.
It's very cool.
I'm just going to take another moment to plug compliance, because anytime we start adding these things like offline lists, that means that people aren't using some other non-Microsoft tool to do it. And as long as, again, it exists in SharePoint or OneDrive or Exchange or Teams it's going to be compliant and follow your policies that you already have set up. So I just wanted to kind of point out the significance of this for the compliance people.
Good point.
Any other things that one of you wants to point out as like ending or wrapping up towards the end of this panel discussion? Curious to learn what key announcements you also want to mention.
There was one small thing where everyone was waiting for, I think, which was the announcement for Project Cortex and the first product that was coming out or is coming there, which is called Syntax or Syntax. All these names, how the person that comes up with these names, they have to give him a medal or her a medal. So always good. But yeah, it's quite interesting there. What's happening? There's that pre or alpha phase that nobody was able to talk about. There was a lot of fuss, and finally we see something coming from there. So I'm quite eager to test it out when I get my hands on it.
Likewise.
Well, actually, you can get your hands on it today. As of October 1st, the free trial is available. And then, okay, so what is in Syntax? Let's break it down. So in this first release, we get two things. Number one, the form builder, where we can take a standardized form, such as a purchase order, where the fields are always in the same place. And we can say, if there's data in this box, then write it to this SharePoint column. And then, of course, if the data is in a column, we can kick off workflows. We can build your custom solutions to your heart's content. It opens up all the possibilities. And then the other thing that is coming is, I can't remember the official name of it, but it's for more unstructured, where maybe you have a document that has similar language in it, but it isn't like a form with content in the same place. You can build a machine learning model to recognize that content and apply a content type or managed metadata or put it in a certain place, and of course apply a retention label or other compliance protections.
What else?
Any other takes on syntax or this part?
What I was thinking about when Erica was telling it is AI Builder is also a really big thing these days. And it also comes with a huge price tag. And Project Syntax is taking that price tag not completely away, but you don't have to go all in yet. And most of the people, what they are looking for, or the people that I talk to, it is like invoice management, like we scan a document, we automatically want to tag it. These simple things, that's what Project Syntax is going to do for us. So looking forward to that. And also the people that are thinking about AI Builder, they can now first try this one out.
Yeah, and to be clear, it is AI Builder on the back end. That's what Syntax is using for that. I think you kind of alluded to it, so I figured I'd say it straight out. So yeah, you're correct. It is a lower price point. It still is an add-on license. It's not included with your E5 or your E3, but it is quite affordable for what it is.
All right.
It's what people have wanted for years, since the beginning of SharePoint. This
Yeah.
is what they've wanted, so this is great.
Well,
Yeah.
and in my space, for some reason, like we talked about collaboration, about publishing, but the key aspects of doing like knowledge management has always frustrated me in the limitations that you had to really harness the quality of data that was stored into SharePoint. And of course, 15 years ago, we were all ignorant and we thought that people will do manual classification of documents, and well, that never happened. So we now have the machines to do it, which is a great thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think
Yeah,
I want to.
I was just going to add one more thing. The next phase of Project Cortex is going to be more around that knowledge management piece. So coming soon. The dates keep changing on the roadmap. As of today, it's December 2020, but we'll see.
Okay, cool. So actually, I was working towards now, I think, wrapping up this panel session, but we should at least have one Azure topic. So
is there something around Azure? What I was really looking forward, it was not really an announcement that they did at Ignite, but it was already mentioned at Build, and it came back to Ignite, which was Cosmos DB serverless. Cosmos DB, really great for developers, but yet again came with a price tag to it. And now there's a serverless model around it. So it's not intended for production or very small production systems, but for developers, it's already good to get your hands dirty and start playing with it without that huge price tag of I think it's 24 euros to 80 euros. So each month, and that goes quite fast. And if you have 100 euro of credits with your Azure subscription or with your Visual Studio subscription, that goes quite fast there. So that was something I'm really looking forward to it. Also because you have static websites or static web apps coming there, which is in preview. So a lot more is back to the old days where everything was static, and then just creating a backend system where we're calling in for some pieces of information, but we still have to get the database, and then maybe Cosmos DB serverless is a good option there.
Great. Well, I'm very happy we at least also touched one Azure topic here, and I think it's a good one. So thank you for that.
Shall we also touch on a Linux topic?
Well, wrapping up, I want to thank all of you for joining us here in this panel discussion. I really liked it. Good stuff. And to the viewers, I want to say enjoy the rest of the day. Say hi.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.